So let me start with a question. When was the last time you felt like someone was speaking directly to you, as if you knew exactly what they were going through? Maybe it was a book that seemed written for your exact situation, or a podcast where you thought, it's like they're in my head. That's not coincidence. That's audience clarity. When you understand exactly who's on the other end of the microphone, magic happens. Welcome to Fearless Podcasting Academy. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Dean. I've always lived in two worlds, one filled with the magic of storytelling and language, and the other wired with technology and innovation. And through the years of research and teaching and hands-on experience, I've been obsessed with one question: what makes a message truly resonate? And that's why I created the Fearless Podcasting Academy, where creators and entrepreneurs and change makers come to ditch self-doubt, amplify their voices, and build podcasts that demand attention. So whether you're launching your first episode or leveling up your platform, you're in the right place. Because when you learn to use your voice with confidence, you don't just start a podcast, you start a movement. This is Fearless Podcasting Academy. So last week, we explored the power of storytelling and how narrative frameworks can transform your content from informative to unforgettable. If you haven't caught that episode yet, I highly recommend you go back and listen, because those storytelling techniques become even more powerful when you understand exactly who you're talking to. Which brings us to today's focus, audience clarity. By the end of our time together today, you're going to have a framework for creating your listener avatar, practical strategies for researching your ideal audience, and a clear understanding of how to tailor your content to speak directly to their needs, even if you're currently talking to what feels like an empty void. Because when you speak to everyone, and I promise you this is true, you connect with no one. But when you understand exactly who's on the other end of the microphone, magic happens. So let me start with a question. When was the last time you felt like someone was speaking directly to you, as if you knew exactly what they were going through? Maybe it was a book that seemed written for your exact situation, or a podcast where you thought, it's like they're in my head. That's not coincidence. That's audience clarity. So when I first launched my podcast about leadership development, I made the classic mistake that nearly every creator makes. I tried to be helpful to everyone. My intro went something like, whether you're a seasoned executive, a new team leader, or a solopreneur, or just someone interested in leadership principles, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, can you spot the problem there? I was trying to cast the widest possible net. I was afraid of excluding anyone who might benefit from my content. And the result was a resounding crickets. My download numbers were dismal. My engagement was non-existent. Why? Because when you try to speak to everyone, your message becomes so diluted that it resonates with no one. But everything changed when a mentor asked me one simple question. Who is the person who absolutely needs to hear what you have to say? Not a demographic, not a vague group, one specific person. And that question forced me to get specific. I pictured Sarah. She's a mid-career professional woman who'd just been promoted to her first leadership role. She was technically brilliant, but had never managed people before. She was overwhelmed, she was afraid of making mistakes, and secretly wondered if promotion had been a terrible idea, imposter syndrome, anybody. So when I started creating episodes specifically for Sarah, addressing her fears, addressing her unspoken questions, speaking in a language that resonated with her experiences, something remarkable happened. My downloads tripled in 2 months. Even more surprisingly, I started getting all these messages from listeners saying, it's like you're speaking directly to me. That, my friends, is the paradox of audience clarity. The more specific you get, the more universal your appeal becomes. And we are going to go deep into that today. But first, today's episode, I want to tell you, is brought to you by my Hooked Storytelling System. It is the proven framework that has helped hundreds of podcasters transform their content from forgettable to irresistible. So if you have been struggling to keep listeners engaged, it may not be what you're saying, but how you're saying it. So the Hooked Storytelling System gives you a step-by-step process for crafting narratives that captivate your audience from the first word you speak to the last. This is not just about telling better stories. It's about creating content that builds loyalty, that drives growth, and positions you as the go-to voice in your niche. The system includes my signature storytelling frameworks, swipe files of proven episode structures, and personalized feedback on your content. So for listeners of the Fearless Podcasting Academy, I am offering a special 20% discount with the code FEARLESS20. If you look down in the show notes, you'll find it. Remember, your expertise deserves to be heard, and the Hooked Storytelling System ensures that it will be. Okay, let's get practical with 3 frameworks to help you develop your listener avatar. The first is what I call the past, present, future framework. And this simple structure helps you understand not just who your listener is today, but where they've been and where they want to go. So I want you to start with their present reality. What are they struggling with right now? What keeps them up at night? What conversations are they having at the dinner table? Then you're going to explore their past. What experiences have shaped their current challenges? What have they tried that didn't work? What beliefs do they hold based on past experiences? Now, finally, I want you to envision their desired future. What does success look like for them? What transformations are they seeking? So let me demonstrate a little example for you, because I know that was a lot. So I worked with a client, we're going to call her Maria today, who was launching a podcast about sustainable living. When we did this exercise, here's what emerged. Her listener's present reality was feeling overwhelmed by climate anxiety and confused by contradictory information about what actions actually make a difference and what's just greenwashing. So their past included attempts at going green that felt too extreme or too inconvenient to maintain, and that led to a lot of guilt and a sense of failure. Their desired future was living more sustainably without sacrificing modern conveniences or feeling constantly deprived. So with this clarity, Maria's content strategy became obvious. Her podcast needed to bridge the gap between eco-perfectionism and practical sustainability and offer guilt-free approaches that acknowledged her listeners' reality. Her downloads and engagement far exceeded her expectations because her content addressed the specific tension her audience was experiencing, not just like generic sustainability tips that you can just grab on YouTube or grab online. Okay, the second framework is the 5 whys of audience motivation. So this technique is borrowed from manufacturing problem solving, actually. And this is really going to help you dig below surface level interest to uncover deeper motivations driving your listeners. You're going to turn into a 2-year-old, and that's okay. So here's how this works. I want you to start with the basic reason someone might listen to your podcast. Then ask yourself, why does that matter? 5 times, going deeper with each response. Let me give you an example. If you have a fitness podcast, for example, the initial answer might be listeners want to get in shape. Okay, why? Because they want to feel more confident. Okay, well, why does that matter? Well, maybe they felt overlooked or judged because of their appearance. Cool. Why does that matter? Maybe they believe that being fitter will help them be taken more seriously in their career or their relationships. Okay, great. Why does that matter? Okay, they want agency and respect that they haven't experienced before. Okay, why does that matter? Because they want to feel in control of how the world responds to them rather than feeling powerless. Do you see how different your content would be if you were addressing that 5th level motivation rather than just talking about workout routines? Again, something that anybody could grab. This exercise transforms your understanding of your audience from what they want to why they want it. And that is where the connection happens. I've mentioned it before. I feel like I mention it in every other podcast episode. But if you have not checked out Simon Sinek in his Start With Your Why, either the book or his phenomenal TED Talk, you need to do that. You need to do that, period. Pause the podcast, go watch the TED Talk, and come back. That is your little side quest right now. Okay, I'm glad you're back. If you paused, welcome back. So let me give you the 3rd framework. That is a day in the life immersion. And I promise this will make sense here in a second. This exercise requires you to literally map out your ideal listener's typical day from the moment they wake up until they go to sleep. What time do they wake up? What's the first thing that they do? What does their morning routine look like? What stresses them out on their commute? What victories or challenges do they experience at work? What do they do to unwind? Who do they interact with throughout their day? I know it's a lot of questions, but this exercise, while it might seem excessive, it creates the context for understanding how and when your podcast fits into their life. Are they listening while they're commuting, while they're doing household chores, during a lunch break? This insight is going to help you not only create more relevant content, but also influences practical decisions about things like episode length. You probably don't want more than 20 minutes if they're commuting, or release timing, or even production style. Okay, now that I've shared these frameworks, you might be thinking, Okay, but Stephanie, this all sounds like guesswork. How do I know who my audience really is? Yes, that is a great question. So let's talk about some audience research techniques that don't require a marketing budget, $0. This first technique is what I call digital ethnography. This simply means observing where your potential listeners are already gathering online. Remember cute cat theory? Where are they already sharing pictures of their cute cats? Is it Facebook groups or subreddits or Blue Sky? Quora questions. Where are they asking questions related to your topic? So in the beginning, don't participate at first. Just observe. What questions keep coming up? What frustrations are people expressing? What language are they using to describe their challenges? That's going to be really important because they are giving you the language to give back to them with the solutions. These observations are going to give you invaluable insights into your audience's world, allowing you to speak their language and address their actual concerns rather than what you assume they care about. Okay, the second technique is avatar interview. I know, we're going to have a conversation. I want you to identify 3 to 5 people who represent your ideal listener, and I want you to conduct some informal conversations with them. These are not podcast interviews. They are not podcast interviews. They are research opportunities. I want you to ask questions like, what resources do you currently use to learn about whatever topic? Or what questions do you still have that those resources aren't answering? What's your biggest challenge you're facing related to whatever your topic is? What would you make a podcast about for your topic? Or what would make a podcast about whatever topic unmissable for you? These patterns that emerge from these conversations will sharpen your audience clarity dramatically. Okay, the third technique now is competitor analysis with an audience lens. So I want you to listen to the top podcasts in your niche, but instead of focusing on the content, focus on who they're speaking to. Who seems to be their ideal listener? What assumptions are they making about their audience's knowledge level, their challenges, their interests? What audience needs are they meeting well, and where are the gaps? This analysis helps you identify audience segments that are either underserved or might be better served by your unique approach, your unique ideas, baggage, all the stuff that you bring to it that we talked about a few episodes back. Now I want to give you our Fearless Moment, which is a new segment that we are doing this season. We're going to confront that common fear that holds a podcaster back. So today's fear, the worry that getting specific about your audience means limiting your growth. I hear it all the time. But if I focus just on busy moms, I'll alienate the busy dads who might benefit from my content. Or if I target beginners, what about all the intermediates or advanced people who might listen? So this is a super common fear, and it's understandable, but it's misplaced. And here's why. Clarity is not the same as exclusivity. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. Clarity is not the same as exclusivity. When you clarify who your core audience is, you're not building a wall to keep others out. You're shining a beacon to guide your ideal listeners in. People outside your core audience who resonate with your message will still find value in your content, but they'll understand they're eavesdropping on a conversation meant primarily for someone else, and that is perfectly okay. Think about it this way. Some of my favorite books were not written for a 40-something-year-old podcast coach, but the message was universal enough that it still resonated with me. I didn't feel excluded. I felt like I discovered something valuable, even if I was not the primary intended audience. YA as an adult, anybody? Your clarity creates connection, and connection creates impact. Don't dilute that power by trying to speak to everyone. So as we wrap up today's exploration of audience clarity, I want you to remember this. Your ideal listener is not a marketing concept. They're your creative North Star. When you understand this deeply, content decisions become clearer, your voice becomes more authentic, and your impact becomes more profound. So your homework before our next episode is to use at least one of these frameworks we discussed to start developing your listener avatar. Then I want you to share a brief description in our community using the hashtag #FearlessAudience. I'm going to personally review as many as I can. So next week, we're going to build on this foundation as we explore content strategy. We're going to create an episode roadmap that serves both your audience's need and your creative sustainability. So until then, remember that the most powerful words in podcasting are not "listen to me," but "I see you." When your audience feels truly seen and understood, They'll not only listen, they'll become your most passionate advocates. I'm Dr. Stephanie Dean from Fearless Podcasting Academy. Thank you for continuing this journey towards your fearless voice.